Thank you, everybody. Do you know, this is the second time in 2 days I've done a panel with Jeff, and he was late for the other panel as well. Can I bring... now I have no panel. Panelists, we're starting. Please. Hello, Mr. Eales. Paging Mr. Eales. Paging Mr. Eales. I think, Jeff, you're meant to sit at the far end, so these helpful aid memoirs will tell everybody.
Okay.
Fine, look at this.
Musical chair.
I promise you, it gets better after this.
Are we aligned?
Right, so welcome to the multi-currency panel. As many of you will know, the US is right in the middle of a truly exciting transition from a single currency marketplace to a multi-currency marketplace. The sellers, the big TV networks, are profoundly convinced that this transition will deliver enormous benefits. So the question that arises, and the question we intend to explore today, is a multi-currency marketplace right for everybody? And I can't think of three better executives to guide us through this debate than the three we have here. So, Fariba, let's just start with you. You're a US expert. Based on what you've seen in the US, do you think there might be a strong and practical case for Europe's TV markets following the US example?
Yes. I mean, to just answer it bluntly, I know we'll chat about this amongst my colleagues here based in Europe, but I think we've learned quite a bit in the US example of why an alternative currency is relevant. And really, it's a drive by the advertisers because of the access to passively collected data. I work at TiVo, to introduce myself. My name is Fariba Zamaniyan. I'm Vice President of Data and Monetization Sales based in the US, New Yorker. TiVo has been at the kind of center of a lot of the change, but on the back end, because we've been a provider of television viewership data and metadata that's really been serving as a spine for the alternative currencies to really build their position, years of testing and validation. We've learned a lot. There's a lot to benefit from outside of the US, but as you stated, this US is a very large and diverse market, and audience identification has become front and center. And so the advertisers have been exposed to deterministic data stemming from set-top box and ACR, which has gotten them excited about the ability to really plan and buy their advertising and ultimately measure and recycle that back into the process at that same level versus planning on one set of metrics, currency, based on demo and gender, and then measuring on something more refined that aligns with consumer segmentation strategies. So to impact performance, they've really embraced alternative currency. So I think that in the markets outside of the US, as data becomes more available and accessible beyond panel, that will enable them to really demand more refined metrics that a panel cannot alone deliver, I think sparks and presents opportunity.
Cool. That's a yes, then.
Yes.
David, is there a strong practical case? Obviously, NBCU has been right at the forefront of lots of these changes in the States, so I'm interested to hear your European perspective.
Of course. My answer would be kind of. I think there's a danger in looking over to the US and then just drawing that general assumption that every market is the same.
Couldn't agree more.
It should follow those same guidelines and sort of protocols. There's a ton of great innovation that's going on around the world. So my job is to look after global research for NBCU outside of the US. So the US is obviously at the forefront of a lot of these measurement developments right now, for sure. But a lot of those developments have been moved on because it didn't have that framework in place that a lot of the other markets around the world have had. So it's kind of looking at kind of apples and oranges in that way. And probably maybe a hybrid approach is the way forward. And I'm sure, I didn't quite hear what Patrick was talking about earlier on, but I'm sure he was leading in that direction as well. There's still absolutely a role for a JIC and a single currency and that global voice of truth, but then a position underneath that when we're looking at kind of an undercurrency approach where many, many other data sources come into play, address the questions that advertisers are having, but need to be verified, ratified, certified by if it's a JIC or a third party like OpenAP, an organisation of that nature.
So in a funny sort of way, you're suggesting we don't want to go down the kind of US route, but perhaps there's a case for the pound and some Bitcoin type cyber currency things underneath.
Yeah, the pound, the euro, and the dollar. It's all currency.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Mr. Eales, are we already there? Should we head in the US direction? Give us a view.
Well, so in the UK, we cover obviously UK and Ireland, so I can speak hopefully for both of those. So if we go back on what we already have, obviously we've had Barb for a long, long time. We know and trust that. AdSmart launched in 2014, and we have a set-top box panel that measures and supports that. And that works actually in harmony with Barb to give buyers the understanding of what we call the knockback is of AdSmart to their linear spot, and then we transact impressions for AdSmart campaigns using a million to 500,000 set-top box records for that. So we're well advanced in using having a separate currency for AdSmart and using set-top box data to do that. And it's very good, but it's complicated, like a lot of things. And of course now we've got C-Flight. We've been spending. I've hopefully helped the Sky initiative with Channel 4 and ITV to put C-Flight in place, and C-Flight adds in the new ad server data. So we've now got ad server data in a C-Flight currency. So now we've got, well, not a currency, but a C-Flight measure. Okay? So if you like, we've got those building blocks in place. One of the key learnings, and I will not stop from saying this, key learnings from putting ad server data together with linear data is copy number, copy number, copy number, okay? Which is a fundamental building block that you can't add two things together if you don't know what they actually are, okay? And ad servers don't really like copy numbers. And in TV, we love copy numbers. So by copy number, I mean the absolute unique identification of every single ad.
And it's worth saying that one of the more staggering facts about the US marketplace is that there is no such
There is no standard.
in
no
place.
standard.
So you're not actually sure, right? Got to be careful here. You're not actually sure that the commercial that you're tracking against linear and non-linear is actually the same commercial, right? You have to do that manually.
But I think
right?
the point you're making, in a sense, is that Fariba's a yes, David's a maybe, and we're
Getting
getting
Well,
there.
we're in one instance we're already there, right? On AdSmart, we're running an alternate currency, but you would think that journey, right, would be C-Flight is going into Barb in January.
Yep.
So those building blocks, Barb are already looking at testing set-top box data. So that's part of the journey. There's still quite a lot of agreement to be had
So is your
about what we
argument
do
that we are well on the way already?
We're on the way
towards being a multi-currency TV market.
What I think we have to be very, very careful with, and I think we agree completely on this, is that for years and years and years, measurement and currency have been the same thing, right? We have built a currency out of the measure, right? I'm not sure, and this is a kind of a Jeff thing, not necessarily, which is we're here trying to work out how we do it with the methodologists, right? Okay, it's easy for me to say, right? Which is I'm not entirely sure measure and currency will actually be exactly the same thing.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
Agreed.
Right. Okay. So because we're talking about measuring people, but actually the currency might be a measure of device activity. Right, so long as it's trusted, safe, brand safe.
The positive thing is we have seen it's been the most extraordinary time for measurement innovation during the last 10 years, which is super positive, but it does, you could argue, somewhat complicate the currency debate. So let's do the one obvious question. When we say currency, what are we actually talking about? David, do you want to have a go? When you think currency, what do we mean?
For sure. Well, my new mode of working is if I'm struggling for a question, I ask ChatGPT. So I've got ChatGPT, and it says, currency refers to a standardized metric or system used to measure the value of advertising, allowing for a precise and fair transaction. The next bit is very relevant and pertinent today. So kudos to ChatGPT. The evolution of digital and streaming media is constantly shaping and adding complexities to these currencies, and which is why we've got 2 days, basically, of chatting nonsense about it. But I think one thing around a currency that is pretty fundamental from my point of view is that it has to include all major players in the industry. You can't have a true currency without all parties, all players being involved.
I mean, clearly, but I guess the UK is a very concentrated market in a sense. We have three major sales houses. Does that mean, by your argument, what Jeff is doing with AdSmart doesn't, unless, I mean, obviously there are other parties on AdSmart, but does AdSmart qualify as a currency in that sense?
It does if, how am I going to, Sky were the only people actually offering AdSmart, then to all intents and purposes, that is the industry. Okay, so I think that is fair to say, because if anybody else joined us, Virgin joined us, and so we use their set-top box data. We don't join it, but we use their set-top box data to increase the currency. So from that point of view, that's a joint currency. If any other, if Channel 4 or ITV or anybody else joined AdSmart, you would expect them to use that AdSmart currency. We wouldn't say, go use your own, because you almost can't. So I think it would be fair to say that it fits, okay? I would class it as an undercurrency.
An undercurrency?
Yeah, an undercurrency is my new introduction to everybody today.
I'll take that.
So there is a currency that is the umbrella that sits at the top,
right,
which could be Barb, it could be GFK, it could be Mediametry, whatever it will be. Underneath that, there will be specific undercurrencies that may go a step further in terms of incorporating technology, incorporating, true multimedia measurement. That piece, in theory, should and could be verified by an independent third party. And then it can become an undercurrency, but as it doesn't include everybody.
That, to me, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that, and also to what Jeff said, is that I see it as the currency is between you and the seller, or the buyer, sorry. Yes. It's your universe. And I think that undercurrency you describe is similar to what's happening in the US, where we have three, runners for the title of alternative, is that in each of their methods and what they've devised as their means to define a currency is between them and the buyers, the sellers and the buyers. So they're independent individual universes where they can because I take it as a literal definition of it's just a means for deal making and pricing. It's a transaction enabler. It is comprised in many cases of some type of viewership data and some type of identification of what is being watched, when, how often, for how long. But that's why I think there's a place for these alternatives to sit in this. I like how you coined, I'm going to steal that if you don't mind.
Sure. Just when I get royalties.
Yeah, exactly. We'll work that part out. So I think that's what makes it, and that's why I believe, yes, to your first question, that there is a place for it.
But John, there is a practical issue here. Okay, so we are, certainly in the development team, we are always challenged with operational efficiencies and getting things better. And of course now, in a world of sustainability, we need to make sure the databases don't just exponentially grow. Okay, we've got to make sure that we're holding the data properly. So when somebody says, let's measure everything on sensor space, on one hand you go, brilliant. On the other hand, you go, whoa, hold on a minute. That's a lot of data. Okay, so we've got to be careful that just because we can doesn't mean to say we should, right? But what's actually happened operationally in all of this is that every single currency needs new campaigns, needs a campaign with a budget, with a price agreement, and hopefully a payment at the end of it. And I have to tell you, that chain is not seamless. Okay, right? Any new currency being involved often means you don't get paid, okay, because you haven't fully agreed in that entire chain who's going to pay what and what the metric is.
But I think what's really interesting about this debate and the difference from the US, in the US, there was a perception on the part of many sellers, which they've been very vocal about, that a more competitive currency marketplace will deliver better products at cheaper prices and stimulate more innovation. And I think what we're saying in the UK and possibly other European markets, where I like your notion, Dave, of undercurrents, which I think will become industry parlance from now on. Congratulations.
You got the new buzzword. Yes.
That we may not be in a place where the UK market is large enough to want to support genuinely competitive currencies, but there are new ways of transacting TV. And I guess the question that arises then is, to your point, Jeff, do we need to do more to solidify some of those non-Barb transactional
We have 7 currencies at the moment. In Sky Media, for the UK, we have 7 currencies. Okay, so each of those needs to be supported by a campaign. So whereas before you bought linear TV and that was all you needed, and you got your £100,000 and delivered £100,000 of value, now there's 4 or 5 different platforms that you, whether it's Sky Go, Sky VOD, AdSmart, or Now. Okay, all of those potentially have a different metric. So a different metric has to be a different campaign. So that means, for me, right, and for Sky operations, it means a lot more operations people in an environment that's digital.
And presumably your customers would like it if other sellers were leveraging the same currency units and metrics
we would think
to support those transactions.
Yeah.
David, in which case, from your point of view, is that where you think, with your undercurrent notion, we should be aggressively trying to head or pushing proactively towards?
I think so, and I think we're perhaps this might just be a short-term period of flux while we're waiting for different currencies to rise up and take over from others. I think one thing we do see in the US with the 3 different types of currency, it means holding companies can pick their poison of who they want to transact with and how they transact with the major broadcasters.
And I think the challenge for the US holding companies, the big agency groups will often complain about, is that this is not going to be a quick transformation. It's a long process, as Jeff would say.
These are, systems that, like the Mediation system, the buy-in, where the transactions actually, to your point, Jeff, about, getting paid. You have to have a transactional system that can support more than one currency. And I think there are strides being made where the announcement with Paramount,
but I feel like
doing a test.
I feel that what most of the agency groups would say is, if you're planning a multi-currency transition, number one, it'd be nice if it was quite well organised.
Yes.
Right. 2, could we have a 10-year lead time?
Well, I don't know, given what in the
Maybe
US,
5.
they want it in place by the upfront, in 24. So the timeline is tight.
But I think you're right to point to agency planning and buying systems as one of the kind of log jams or bottlenecks, because the dirty secret of most agencies is they still run on Excel. Right. And it's complicated to simply upgrade your systems, and then you've got to educate planners and buyers to use the new currencies. You've got to think about how you're buying against addressable, streaming, using data in clean rooms. It's not a simple, easy transition.
Yeah. And I would say that's just not the case for advertisers and holding companies. Broadcasters and media companies also have those same challenges as well, and internal processes and systems can sometimes take time to overhaul. So these changes don't get made overnight. And also, if you think about JICs and how long some of those contracts last for, some of the contracts might be running until 2029, 2030. Mm-hmm. So you're bound by those contract durations to even before you start thinking about innovation and new ideas.
So we've agreed that we're already heading in that direction. Mm-hmm. We've agreed that undercurrent is maybe better than multi-currency. We've agreed that some sort of standardization across sellers and buyers would be helpful. I'd love to talk about other European markets and how material a factor scale is. So I think the Dutch market is give or take €1 billion of revenue. Mm-hmm. It's a much smaller marketplace, of course. Can a smaller market afford multiple currencies?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Why not? Yeah.
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
I mean, in Ireland, it's.
So market scale is not a huge factor.
I don't necessarily think so, because we've got. Because people, with the companies, Nielsen, Kantar are building these things. Okay, so obviously there's learnings and there's that you can use part of those in your makeup. You wouldn't. I don't think every country. I'd love every country. It would be nice if we had kind of a standard stack. That would be great. But I'm going to retire before then, John. Right? Even though few people thought I'd have retired already. Only a medium-sized titter. That's good. That's
Some
good
of us
news.
You're never going to retire.
Well, I know.
It's not going to happen.
So I think yes is the answer to the question. And actually, it almost doesn't matter. There's almost do nothing is not really an option.
Yeah.
Right. The world has changed out there, and we need to go with it.
Yeah, and if there was an award fence sitting today in this panel, I'd probably win it, because I'd also say yes and no. So I think yes, for sure. In smaller markets, you often see some of the best and brightest innovation.
Sure.
So
Exactly.
talking about Netherlands, and it opens the door for smaller vendors and smaller companies to enter the market as well. So the Nordics, for example, is a great hotbed for trial. Finland doing some really good stuff at the moment with a small company called Data Breeders, who would have won that contract and would have outbid all those main players. So I think there's room for innovation on that side of things. I think one area where there is, where my no answer would come through, will be scaling US innovation, which is, world leading at the moment in terms of the tech side of things, naturally, because, but bringing those companies into Europe with the complexity of the multi-markets, with languages, as we said before. I was in New York last week speaking to a potential vendor who's looking to scale into Europe. It was, we're going to try the UK first, then we're going to try EU5, then we might expand a bit further. That's all going to take time to, they've got a great product and we really want to work with them in multiple markets, but they're not ready for that just yet. It will come, but it will take time.
So if we've kind of agreed the direction of travel, that there's no question that anybody wants to replace Barb, it's about building undercurrencies beneath Barb that are compatible with it. What are the practical steps you think we should take in order to support a successful transition to a more diverse currency marketplace? I mean, Fariba, from the US, if there's 3 things to take away from the US experience, what would they be?
I come back to the availability of data. So, I set out 13 years ago working with set-top box data to change the way we planned and bought and sold linear data, and it came with tremendous opposition. And I think now, we're I just totally lost my train of thought on the question.
Happens to me all the time. Building blocks for this new currency future. What do we need to get right?
So it's the accessibility to the data is really where I got lost in thought track. Was we are, we've migrated. TiVo started as DVR company. Our 25th anniversary is coming up. We've been acquired by a company called Xperi that has several brands, DTS, HD Radio, and IMAX Enhanced. And the evolution of our software capabilities and bringing entertainment experiences to consumers is by enabling the data to be shared in the marketplace. So filling a need gap and a position as an independent provider of data. And the walled gardens have slowed a lot of that growth in information sharing and intelligence that could be leveraged to move the industry forward, and we are moving beyond even in-home and into the automobile. So I think our position in 24 forward with Europe is bringing ACR data into the marketplace and not behind a walled garden, but with the launch of an operating system partnering with OEMs such as Vestel and Sharp are the first, where we plan to fill that and make data available.
And I think you've hit on one key point there, which is that we are never in any market going to have census-level data from every TV set, clearly.
No.
So we need both standardized ways of making data available for use in syndicated measurement solutions, and that standardization is not straightforward. And we're going to have black holes. We're going to have holes in that data, biases, flaws, and we need some ways of dealing with that. David, what would you like to see us do to support a successful transition to a more diverse currency marketplace?
I think experimentation and innovation is key. At the risk of referencing C-Flight on yet another occasion today, I think that's a really good blueprint of how other markets can bring in that innovation and adapt, and eventually it can become part of the currency and part of the JIC. So obviously it was NBC, originated from NBC in the US, brought over by Sky into the UK, enhanced and kind of supercharged it to provide that de-dupe reach and frequency element, and integrated into other markets as well. And that was with Channel 4 and ITV as well. So it was that cross-calibration was really important. And then obviously over time that's been proven to be a success in the market, and then it gets incorporated into the JIC. So I think it's that, for sure innovation should take place, but innovation with other broadcasters, and not having that siloed mentality from a broadcaster point of view, either with other broadcasters or obviously with holding companies as well, and innovating along those lines. I think you only need to look at the attention debate at the moment, to see how many people are kind of quite keeping their secrets close to their chest, keeping the way they measure attention close to their chest on the holding company side of things. Moving to a universal measurement on that side of the fence would make things much more straightforward.
Cool. Jeff, the one thing we've got to get right?
Well, I think if it's not obvious that Sky has been committed to being part of an industry currency from the beginning, literally when there's 25 channels, whatever, literally. So that absolutely hasn't changed. So the support of the support from Sky of an industry currency, we completely understand and absolutely understand the benefit of, right? But we've moved, and so the direction of travel now is we've learnt a lot from the C-Flight project. Just to get a measure of adults. We've been working for the last year on audiences, and that again has created a great deal of understanding of how that works, or how it doesn't work, or what the challenges are. So we're in a pretty good place to be able to see whether or not we can move that forward. We're looking at set-top box data through BAR as well. So hopefully it's watch this space, but there's other agreements that we need to have on that journey.
Specifically with the other big sales?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Which seem to be somewhat slow and painful to arrive at, is it?
Well,
they take a little time.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time because change is painful, growth is painful. We already agreed that, and there are a lot of things to consider while you're moving forward to do that. A lot of things.
Cool. Look, it's really rare you sit in a panel, I find, when a new piece of industry parlance, a term we will all be using, is coined. So kudos, Dave, for that.
I'm not sure I want to be part of an undercurrency, I have to tell you, okay? Because for those of you who don't know, I have a farm now and I've got 5 pigs,
we
right?
heard about that.
And somebody's told me that 5 pigs means that I can get rid of people, right?
What?
Okay, seriously.
Wait.
Pigs eat.
Sorry, Jeff,
read it up, seriously.
People?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very good
When
way.
you say get rid?
Yes, correct. So I'm not worried. I don't want to be part of an
there's a
undercurrency.
relevance.
Should we be worried?
And have
I
5
know.
pigs.
I was like,
How
what's
do your,
gonna happen
how do
if
your
we go through
pigs
that
relate
door?
to the multi-currency debate?
Nothing at
know,
all.
come
They actually. It's the only time I don't think about it. Seriously.
Oh,
Anyway,
good.
I just thought I'd add that in as a little bit of light
Do you
relief.
know, I feel like that was,
When you're with your
that
pigs.
was
Yeah.
one of the more Monty Python moments,
Yes.
I feel, from any panel I've been in. It's a showstopper. So, Jeff, thanks for your pigs, and so long and thanks for all the fish. That was the multi-currency panel.
Thanks very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.